Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Jim and Shelby Show, All Things Print Podcast. I'm Jim Raffle, and I'm joined, as almost always,
by Shelby Sapusik. Hi.
wow, we took a little break there. So I had some holidays and work things and all that other life stuff, but we're back, and we've discussed what we want to talk about today, and that is the topic of education and training in 2023, what we think that's going to look like for printing companies, graphic arts industry as a general category. And so let's get started. What do you see as far as training going online more and more? Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, it's definitely happened in the last 2 years, and I'm trying to decide if I think it's a good thing or a bad thing.
I think it depends on the type of training. I mean, if you're just, you know, I think there are just some things that have to be taught in person. And I think we learned that early on in 2020 when we were moving a lot of our classes online versus in person, which they were always in person up until that point.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to profile a printer, it's very difficult to show someone how to do that through a Zoom meeting. I just don't think it's as effective. And I'm not convinced that the training that's gone online in the last 3 years are going to remain online. I think I see a trend towards more in person, and I think there's more of an interest for in person.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I agree with what you're saying. I think there are components of training that we were doing, not just us as an industry, there are components of training that were being done in person that actually suited themselves pretty well to online. And so I I feel like there's going to be more and more of a hybrid approach where some of the more basic and classroom um, teachable material is going to be done online, and the in-person is going to be reserved for, as you said, things that really require either live demonstrations or hands-on active participation, like making ICC profiles for inkjet rips. I mean, that's a great example of that. Um, and so, as if we just decide that we agree some training is going to end up online, there's kind of two ways that can go, and you've been involved in both, and I'm really curious what your thoughts about this are. There's self-paced training, which means it's recorded and people just go through it at their own pace.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's live online training, which could be the exact same content, and we have experience with that, but it's taught by instructors with interaction. So what are your feelings about that?
Well, I think we can simply look at the pricing and you get what you pay for. Are you getting the same experience with a pre-recorded session that is self-paced? Yes, but can you ask questions and get answers? No, not right there, not as it's going on. So if I look at the pay that what you have to pay to go through that training, on the low end it's the pre-recorded, and then the medium is the live online, and then it's more expensive in person. So I would just say you get what you pay for. If you want a more immersive experience, then you probably want to do in person.
I love that word. That's a great differentiator. If I sign up for a self-paced pre-recorded class, there is really no immersion there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've I've been asked to, I don't think I've actually taken any recently, but I've been asked to review some, and they're very impersonal. They're informative. There's no question about it. They're informative, but they're very impersonal. And so um, that's a great distinction. And I feel like you were part of the color management professional CMP fundamentals
Yeah,
class that Printing United does. You are one of the pre-recorded instructors,
I,
and you've also had the distinction of teaching that class live and online. And
and in person.
you're right, and you've done it all three ways. That's correct. And I know that you had a great deal of frustration creating the recorded part because, well, and
Well,
I think it's the same reason, because you don't have an audience there. You don't have that immersive experience. It's just you staring into a camera talking, really, right? I mean, it's hard.
well, I don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with pre-recorded. Some people learn better that way. And what my frustration, as you called it, was more of a personal preference. I think I've told you many times, I would rather be on stage in front of 1,000 people live teaching these things rather than recording, because for me, the recording has to be as perfect as possible. There's no room for me to say, wait, I misspoke. Let me clarify. Oh, that's a good question. Let me go further into that. I don't have any wiggle room. So for me, the personal preference is either live online or in person.
That's a really good way to describe it. And now we just need to take a short detour into the Jim and Shelby aspects of this podcast. I want to remind everyone who doesn't know, and you, that I don't know, maybe a dozen years ago, I convinced you to go up on stage and talk for the very first time live as what we then called the Jim and Shelby Show. It had a different name, and we talked about a different topic, and you hated it. And for you to now say that you'd rather be on stage in front of 1,000 people than record something, it's just, I had to laugh a little bit. So,
Well, as I said, I'm a person who is conversational. So me staring into a camera and telling people what I think about the material, I'm not saying there's not value in that at
right.
all. I mean, some people, as I said, really do learn better that way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I teach as well that way.
Mm-hmm.
But
That's fair. No,
yeah.
and I think there's room for all of it. I mean, that's the important thing. I think what we're trying to do is help our listeners see what the distinctions are. And if you're going to set aside some dollars for training in 2023, you may want to put it in 3 different buckets, right? I mean, you may want to put some of it in the pre-recorded self-paced training, some of it in the live online, and some set aside for in-person when appropriate. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about the in-person learning.
Okay.
Obviously, or not obviously, you and I know that in 2019, going back to pre-pandemic, we had a tremendous amount of live in-person training that was hands-on in nature. And there's no question that in 2023, there is less of that, at least looking ahead at schedules. There is less of that, and there's going to continue to be less for a while. I agree with you that as time goes on, it's going to come back. But how do you see in-person training looking in 2023?
I just believe there's going to be more of it. We started seeing this. I mean, I think we were going to talk about ISA a little bit from last year, and didn't they say that they had more people interested in the educational sessions than ever, or in the last however many years? I
Yes.
think that's a clear indication that the need is there. And if the need is there, if the want is there, I mean, it's simple supply and demand, right? So I don't see why there would be less in-person training in 2023. I believe, and look at our schedule, look at our calendar. Yes, we are doing live online CMP, color management professional fundamentals courses, but we're also doing some in-person ones, and people are pretty excited about it.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, just circling back to ISA, because that was, that's coming up on being almost a year ago. And
Sure.
I remember the staff there talking to us how every session is full. Everything is booked to capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And the only other time I've ever been in trade show based training environments that were booked to capacity, I've been asked to be part of a pre-conference session at a different show several times, and that thing's almost always booked to capacity. And it's a couple hundred people, but that's a different environment. This is just one of many. I was doing one of many sessions at the exact same time, many sessions throughout the day, and we were in a room that I think they booked us out to 55 or 60, whatever it was. That's all the room would hold.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't put any more people in that room, and at the same time, every other room had a similar capacity and was full. And so they're the ones who shared with us that we can't believe this. We think there's an unbelievable pent up demand for in-person training. So
Yeah, it was great.
yeah, and I think we're going to see that in the couple events we're going to try and put together this year ourselves, and then there's several that we're being asked to be teachers at. We did one last fall that was pretty well attended, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Coming right out of the pandemic, and yeah, I mean it's exciting. So. Um, I'm kind of looking at our little list of topics. We have exhausted our list of
Mhm.
topics.
That's okay.
Is there anything else you would like to talk about as it relates to training and education in 2023?
I think we kind of have our fingers in the mix when it comes to training in the printing industry. So I guess I would just want our listeners to know that if you're looking for something specific, and maybe it's not something we teach, but if you're looking to learn something, reach out to us, email us, and we can try to find the appropriate training for you. We're involved with Printing United Alliance. We're involved with ID Alliance. There's certainly opportunities out there, whether it's just online or live online or in person. I think we could be helpful in that regard.
Yeah, and you just reminded me of something. We back during 2020, we recorded several little quick learning
Mhm.
sessions, and
Sure.
they're
Spot colors. Yeah.
and we've left them on our website, and they're available. The recordings are available for like $20. I think one of them's $49.
Mhm.
Um, and someone actually went through and bought one of those in the last month, and so and I think that's the way it's going to happen. I think training is going to be that's the value of the recorded self-paced. If someone is looking for a specific topic, they need it right now, and they've got to get the information, they can get it immediately. And so there's some real value in that. And that's why I've watched the Printing United iLearning platform.
Mhm.
I had the URL, but we'll get it in the show notes. Their iLearning platform is growing so fast.
Right.
And you're a part of it already. I'm working
Mhm.
on a module for CMP Advanced that will be available within a few months.
Mhm.
And a few other things I've been asked to do that I can't talk about yet. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be a tremendous amount of content on the iLearning platform that's available instantaneously when you need it. And so there is real value in that. But um, I think that the live online is going to continue to grow because it does give you that hybrid where
Mhm.
you can work with standardized content, but you can deliver it in a way that is specific to your audience. And so we're going to be delivering the CMP program several times this year online privately when I say privately, it's to a company where only their employees will be attending.
Mhm.
So we can talk more specifically about the content as it relates to their operations. And you can't get that recorded. Now, obviously, you can also get that in person. And so I think the benefits of in person can be twofold. One is you have that immersiveness where when we do CMP, for example, we teach all the content on day one, and on day two, we do live demonstrations of the concepts we talked about the previous day. So people get to see it, they can come up, they can work with us. And I think there's value in that again, as you said, is almost impossible to duplicate in a virtual environment, because especially when we teach profiling, even
Right.
though they're not doing it themselves necessarily, they can see the prints, they can see the results, they can come up and look at the screen, they can look at the instruments, and
Mhm.
everything's in 3 dimensions, right? And not two. So
Right.
that's what I see. I see there. I think in many ways we'll look back on it as a time when training actually evolved to a higher level, because we now really have better tools for recorded programs. We have better tools for live online programs. And I think in person will become much more focused on what is best suited for in person. So it will have a higher value. And so
Sure.
I'm excited for what education and training is going to look like in 2023.
Sure. And it's kind of like a pair of socks in a way, it's what size fits you best. And there's something to be said to doing online training. I mean, you don't have the travel expenses, you are there in your office, you can, multitask, you're not completely out of, your production. I mean, it just kind of depends. I don't think training is ever again going to be a one size fits all.
Exactly. Exactly. It's going to be much more tailored to what you need. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So we are going to continue to do the Jim and Shelby Show, all things print podcast throughout 2023. I wish I could tell you exactly what the schedule is going to be. Our plan is always weekly. It may not end up being weekly, and we may take other breaks throughout the year as holidays and business travel and such get in the way. But we will continue to be here. If you're interested in being a guest, let us know. We'd love to have guests. It's just sometimes tough to schedule, but we'd love to have guests again. We'll obviously do some fun episodes from trade shows like we did at Printing United. I'm looking forward to doing that soon. And if you have topics you'd like us to talk about, if you don't want to be a guest, but you want to hear us talk about something, let us know, because we want this show to be something that you guys want to listen to and watch and share with your friends.
Fair enough. You can reach out to us at jim@colorcasters.com or shelby@colorcasters.com.
All right. Well, we will see you next week, hopefully.